everyone. I hope that you're all doing well. Long time no see. I hope that COVID isn't getting you down. It's just kind of like a crazy time to be alive at the moment. This isn't how I thought that I would spend my 27th year as a human being. But, you know, sometimes these things happen. But the one thing that 2021 does bring is the opportunity to do more map chats. Yes! Which I'm very excited about. So I actually have almost a whole month of map chats planned for you all. Today we are obviously we're having a do-over map chat with Moath Maps or Illustration. Sorry if I've pronounced that wrong. I'll get him to say it correctly in a moment when we get started. And then next week we have one with Whiskey and Ink. And then the week after is Valentine's Day, so I'm not sure if I'll be doing a live then. But then after we have the Monocled Octopus, and then the last Sunday of the month we'll also be seeing Hoskins Cartography. So lots of exciting map chats to come and watch. And also in the months to come, I've also been speaking to some different creatives, not just people, not just cartographers, people who DMs, authors, and also people who are character illustration and kind of like concept art and stuff like that, which I also find to be really interesting. So hopefully we can get some more kind of different people onto the whole map chats situation. Yeah, so we've got all of those things planned. I'm not sure exactly if I'll be doing them every Sunday, but I'm probably going to have to think of another name that's not map chats, because obviously that doesn't include all the really cool people who I hope to be interviewing. So yeah, I'll have to get some help from you guys on that. Also, can we just have a moment of appreciation for my little rabbit cup that I got the other day? Like, it keeps me hydrated and is cute AF. Okay, so we're actually going to start off the map chats now. Just add in. It's going to work better than last time because we had some technical difficulties, let's say. Let's have a little sip. Dun, dun, dun. I can see a loading screen. That's hopeful. Hello. Hello, can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah, just about. How are you?
Just about. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well, as can be.
Can be, yeah. Everybody's just doing their best.
Yeah, absolutely. I caught the tail end of what you were saying there, about you wanting to interview people who aren't just doing maps, illustrators and
Yes. Yes.
That's interesting, that idea.
Yeah, well, I've had a few different people who I've followed and have followed me, and we've just kind of been talking online, and I was like, well, you know what, like obviously cartography is one part of fantasy in general, but there's lots of other really cool things, and some of my clients have such amazing projects going on. It feels like a crime not to share them with the world. So I'll be seeing more of different people in the future, but today is not about them, it's about you and your do-over map chats. So yeah, just kind of introduce yourself. Please, can you pronounce the name of your account properly for everyone who's watching?
Okay, my name is Joseph. The name of my handle on Instagram is Moath. Moath Illustration. It used to be Moath Maps, but then I wanted to branch out into not just maps, but I wanted to do drawings of other things as well. So changed it to Moath Illustration. I love maps.
Awesome. And how did you, well, firstly, how did you come up with the name Moath? Is it inspired by something local, or?
It's slightly an eccentric story, actually.
I love eccentric stories.
I had a bit of an epiphany whilst looking at a moth. And
as you do.
I was to appreciate the small things at a certain point in my life, you know, learning to just listen to the birds sing and see the beauty in nature, and saw a moth and thought, yeah. And the way most people here in Yorkshire say moth, it's pronounced Moath. So I felt
Yorkshire.
Where are you?
Well, I was actually born in Brighton, so I'm by birth I'm a southerner, but I did spend most of my life in York, so I feel like I'm an honorary Yorkshireman.
Good, good.
So I have the right to shout Yorkshire, Yorkshire, especially if there's any Lancastrians around. So how did you get into drawing maps and doing your illustrations?
I was always really into maps. I was always a bit, like the weird kid who would sort of flip to the back of the book before having read the book and look at the map, and I'd get sort of lost in them, as it were. I could spend hours and hours just looking at atlases and found them thoroughly interesting. Just imagine being there and what it's like, all the intricacies,
Yeah.
That's a tendency that never really left me. I'm into art, as it were, and like for a long time, and still today, I suppose, my primary focus is about like making objective, like certain things in the abstract, like land masses, for example. And I think a really beautiful way of doing that is to encapsulate it all in a map. And I find it really interesting because there's so much you can do with that as well,
Yeah.
There's so many different styles, so many different ways to approach it. So yeah, I went away from doing it for quite a long time because I went to university to do art, and then subsequently went on to do a master's, and then after did a bit of I moved into a Buddhist temple, and
Oh wow.
And at the time I was quite frustrated because I felt as if whilst making art I wasn't enjoying it, and I was making sculptures and there was a lot of arty-farty bollocks, like temporary art, all that, and it's not necessarily it's great, but it's not something I
I think that's something like I didn't do a degree. I did A-level art, and like it's the same thing when you're learning to do art. You have to learn all of the different parts of it, which some of them might be for you, but equally some of them are very much not.
No. And I felt as if I wasn't enjoying it anymore. And art is, something quite meditative, is something quite sentimental to me. So this nun I met, she basically just said, just do what you enjoy. And at the time,
Solid advice.
It seems so arbitrary and simple now, but at the time, it was a big epiphany to me. And I was like, well, what do I enjoy? And I remembered the time, being a kid, looking at atlases, fantasizing about far off lands and all that nerdy stuff, and I just went back to it. So I googled how to draw a map, and came up with various sources, and there's a lot of, as I'm sure you're already very aware, like there's a lot of stuff to do with like D&D and all that, and like that's not necessarily something I'm still like familiar with. So I kind of approach it with a different way. I like it, more as a sort of creative thing, is to relax myself, rather than something to sort of represent something larger, like someone, you know what I mean? Yeah,
no, absolutely. Like I definitely find myself, it's a form of therapy a lot of the time, especially drawing trees. I mean, on a given map, like on an A3 size map, I'd take maybe 5 or 6 hours drawing the trees. So that's time to yourself that you're kind of, it's not a mindless task because you're putting the thought into it, but it's a repetitive and but you also are thinking through the process and stuff like that. So I can definitely see where you're coming from a sort of therapeutic standpoint.
I don't know how you feel about this, but especially trees, right? It's a very meditative thing to do, because you're not really thinking about the previous tree and next tree. It's something that forces you into that sense of like mindfulness, for lack of a better term. Like you're thinking about, how do I do the best with this one specific little tiny tree? I'm not thinking about the next one. I'm not thinking about the one before. It's just forces you into the now.
Yeah.
And I love that about maps, actually. It's just it's like you say, it's a therapeutic exercise. And
yeah. Is there any kind of famous maps or kind of your favorite maps that inspired you in the beginning? I mean, for a lot of people, the Lord of the Rings map is a classic one that people really love, but I don't know if there's any other ones that spring to your mind.
It's the right. I'm going to sound like a bit of a philistine here because I can't actually think of the original source, but it was by the British Empire in 1919. I had that on my time, and it was just it was very biased towards the British Empire.
Well, yeah, as many things are, sadly.
No, yeah, but despite the politics of it, I just grew up loving that. Its color scheme and just it as a work of art. And then obviously there is Middle Earth. I'm huge nerd. I'm just trying to think really. Any others? Yeah, there's quite a few. There's quite a few. I really like the Discworld map.
Yeah, that's beautiful too.
Yeah.
And like just I mean, Terry Pratchett's brain was just such a wonderful place to be. just go in there, live there for, well, I wish I could be a regular in Ankh-Morpork. So how would you describe your style overall, and has it changed from when you started? How would you say that it's developed?
I guess I really like working with traditional media, particularly watercolors. How it's developed over the past, I think I've been doing this, this time round in adulthood for about, I want to say like 6 years. And how it's primarily changed is that I'm using like both traditional and digital media. So I'll often like paint something in watercolor and be quite diligent and obsessive about it for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then decide to scan it into Photoshop and then kind of do the same and edit it in Photoshop. So I like to not distinguish between styles, and I think that kind of helps in terms of thinking about my progression.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking about it in like cross medium.
Yeah, I think it's nice. I particularly like that about your maps and your illustrations, that you've got a mixture of stuff in there. Because I think obviously mine is a very pen and paper, like that's it kind of style. And then there's obviously a lot of other people who are just going digital. So I like that about yours. And particularly I love the color palettes that you use. I think they're really beautiful. So that's something that I've kind of like inspired by you. Hopefully one day I can bust out the watercolors. I think I've probably got one of those sets I had as a kid. And I can do some watercolor. I always used to mess it up when I tried to do it before.
Practice, isn't it? Have you ever thought about making a switch to digital media? Would you ever get an iPad and start drawing on that?
I mean, I do have an iPad, and I've had an iPad for a while now, and it's looking at me going, "You gonna draw me or what?" And I'm just like, "Just calm down, buddy, okay? Like, just chill out." At the moment, I'm quite happy just doing pen drawings. I mean, I would really like to do digital stuff. It's just at the moment the learning curve of trying to actually get into doing it and using Procreate or whatever, it just seems like it's too much effort at the moment. And considering that I have so much support for what I do just with pen and ink, like, I'm more than content. So do you just do yours, the digital ones? Do you do them on Photoshop, or do you have like a tablet or something that you do them on?
It's mostly Photoshop. I borrowed a friend's tablet, like a drawing tablet. I would definitely, if someone can afford it, they should use an iPad. And so many people report that the iPad is just so much more effective.
It's really nice.
Yeah. But I don't have one of them. I just basically just use a graphics tablet and Photoshop. I don't ever port anything. I just scan it and then paint it basically.
Yeah.
One thing I would suggest though, for someone who's like yourself and other people listening who are thinking about making a switch, is YouTube is such a fantastic resource. You know, like this is how I learn.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to learn how to do something, you know, 30 seconds away, you just Google it. And
Yeah, absolutely. YouTube is so, it's just, I think I spend like, don't know, maybe 80% of my day on YouTube.
it's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because it can be very
Yeah.
productive for procrastination as well.
Yeah, if there's a dog video that's linked underneath an art video, you better believe I'm going to be clicking on it. Or actually, one that was early, it wasn't a dog, it was a baby deer that was lost in the forest, and they found it and took it to a home for deer. I was like, this is the content that I want to subscribe to. Oh, and it just made such cute little noises. Now I'm reliving it in my head.
I saw a deer the other day, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you living in like a kind of rural area?
No, not anymore. I live in the centre of a place called Sheffield. I'm sure you.
Oh, yeah.
The city centre, but I work out in the Peak District.
I was about to say, if you saw a deer at home, the deer is lost.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. The Peak District is my primary bit of inspiration, I'd say. Well, beautiful.
Yeah, it's such a lovely. Yeah, it's really beautiful. I wish I do miss that. Like, obviously, living in Spain, the nature here is beautiful, and there's a lot of very scenic views and those kinds of things. But it's a very different type of terrain. And obviously, I've grown up in the UK, and it's all very lush and green. Wet, very wet, but I think I do kind of miss that green, that really like juicy green color, which it's really hard to find here. It's just different kinds of beauty.
Do you find you're inspired by your surroundings now, the Spanish?
Yeah, in a different way. Here I have a lot more access to the sea, which, I mean, I absolutely love the sea and I just want to be in the sea all the time. Although it's a bit chilly at the moment, even for me. So that kind of brings its own kind of, it's more of a calmness, whereas when I was in the UK, I felt like going to the Peak District or the lakes or wherever, it was more of a sense of adventure. So it's kind of like different kind of ambiances, for lack of a better word, associated with different kinds of nature. What's your favourite animal? Now you've just said a bit about the deer.
Favourite animals? Probably a dog.
Probably a dog.
Answer.
I mean, it's a solid answer. 14 out of 10 would choose dogs. Do you have a dog?
Sorry?
Do you have a dog?
No, I don't have a dog. No. I directly had a dog. I've looked after other people's dogs, but I've directly always regret the things you don't do more than the things you do, and I've never gotten a dog.
There's plenty of time to have a dog.
There is, yeah.
There is a dog out there for you, I believe in it. We were slightly on the tangent from cartography there, but dogs need representation in map chats. Do you have any favourite cartographers or just like creative influences in general, either on Instagram or, you know, ye olde artists?
Quite a few. In this regard, I'd say, like, because I'm a huge Hokusai fangirl. I love Hokusai, and I always and I get told that comes out in the work from time to time. I love Hokusai, and that's like the most glaringly obvious thing in the forefront. In terms of like things that people who work and are just hobbyists in the map making genre, as it were, there's a person called Jared Blando. Have you ever?
Yes, the one that wrote the books, right?
Yeah, that book that everyone has. And I love his work. I follow him, and I really, really like his work. And then in terms of, you know, like people who are in this sort of community, as it were, there's one guy, he's a lovely, lovely man, he's an Irish fella called Jog Brogzin.
Yes.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And
his isometric drawings are like...
Yeah, he has. there's that another person that you interviewed her actually, AE Paper Art.
Yeah, she's got beautiful maps.
Yeah, no, but I really admire that. She's quite intuitive because she'll often work up a coffee stain or something like that and sort of
Yeah.
build it up from there. And I find that quite admirable, actually, that style. And there's another person that I follow quite closely for years. Actually, her handle is Monocled Octopus.
Yes, Shea.
And
I'll be doing a map chat with her in a couple of weeks' time, so you'll have to tune in.
yeah, no, all of those people, the last three people I've mentioned, I've obviously seen them on Instagram feed and what have you, and they're quite inspiring. There's loads more people. This is a hobby that's sort of chock full with really, really talented, eclectic mix of styles, and it's just great, you know?
Yeah. Did you find that when you first kind of got into maps in a more serious way that you noticed maps everywhere? Like, I didn't really even kind of recognize them before, but now they're just on everything. They're in all books and on leaflets and on signs and just everywhere. And I'm like, I see maps.
You know, like in a way, but when you see a stain on the floor or, you know, something on the wall and you think, oh, that could be a map, or
yeah.
maps.
Yeah, literally all the time.
Yeah, I had noticed that I certain things become more apparent. You know, like when you're looking for inspiration, you're going to find it. So yeah, no, I do find it does pop up quite often, actually.
Yeah. Would you consider kind of doing more like real world, maybe more of like, I don't know, like the Metro map or something like that, but in your style?
Right. I tried to do one of Lady Bower and Derwent, a place in the Peak District. Sorry.
Okay. I mean, I know where the Peak District is. I've been there, but I'm not so much for the geography. So someone who's into cartography.
Everyone else. No, I tried to do one of quite a large lake, and I couldn't get the proportions right. There's a lot more room for creativity if you're making somewhere, you know, imaginary, as it were.
Yeah.
I do 100% intend to map, you know, places that are close to my heart, and you find that a lot of people do that, don't they? They tend to do a load of sort of fictitious maps, and then do one of wherever they're from. There was a chap who did one, and loads of people, you know, people who make maps, they use one of, say if they're from England, they'll make a map of England or medieval map or like that. So
yeah.
And I've tried and failed. So
No, you haven't failed. You just got to try and try again.
Rubbish. I failed.
No, we won't be having that attitude here, Joseph. Oh. Only positive vibes. Because we're on Instagram and that's where the positive vibes are. Allegedly. What's the favourite map that you've ever done? Do you have a favourite, or I'll let you have two favourites.
I don't really. I tend to forget the map. Like, I post about 50% of the stuff that I make. My favourite map. There's one. It's called Altheim, and it has the, like, I don't know if you're into tarot, but it has the hermit on top.
Oh yeah.
Led Zeppelin album. I quite like that one because I like the way it looks. I was happy with the way it looks, but it was quite sentimental to me because where I was living and where I was at the time, it was, I believe, just before all the whole COVID thing, and it was quite sentimental to. Whenever I look at that, I think back to that time, and, you know, going along with maps being a therapeutic thing, you know, that they can also be a nostalgic thing as well. I found as the of work grows. So yeah, I think that's probably a favorite map. There's another one that I posted recently that took me ages, and I quite like that one as well.
you say that you post about 50% of what you do. How
Yeah.
do you decide like what goes on the feed and what doesn't?
I'm probably of my, I don't know. There isn't really a decision-making process, really. It's just if I think it's if I think it's sort of relevant, as it were, and postable, then I'll usually scan it in and then mess with it digitally a little bit, because everything starts its life as a hard copy of drawing,
Yeah.
and then I'll sort of mess with it digitally, and then once it's in a nice little digital form and it's all 1080p and everything, I'll usually post it. But yeah, the things that stay as hard copies usually get pushed to one side, and then I'll look at them later, 6 months down the line, and sometimes I try to like process them or deconstruct them and then build them back up again. Yeah, I love as well. Like,
sorry, can you repeat that? The connection just cut off what you were saying.
I like experimenting with work. And,
Yeah, I think it's the best way to create new things. Like nothing new ever came from just doing the same thing over and over.
No.
And how do you feel like social media has, do you feel like social media has affected how you make art, like how you share it and think about your own work?
Once in a blue moon, I'll get some really good feedback from people, and that's great. Social media is a bit of a bag of cats, though, as many artists.
Yeah, but not a nice kind of cats.
Yeah.
The mean cats.
Some of them are very highly resentful. Yeah, when I usually tend to use the Instagram feed as a kind of portfolio, and then you have it all kind of objective and all in one place, and it's quite nice to scroll through it. So it alters the way creative process, in the sense that the more the portfolio builds up, and forgive me because I'm kind of thinking on the fly here.
No, of course. It's just, I wasn't a question I'd prepared. I was like, oh, I'm just curious about that.
The more the portfolio builds up, the more you feel marginalized in creative direction, but not marginalized in a bad way, but you feel as if...
No, it's like a personal brand though. Like you've got a style and an aesthetic that you're trying to portray.
I don't know about you, Eve, but I sometimes get the compulsion that I really want to make quite large tangents away from that brand, but I feel sometimes tied to it, especially the more the more the people come to expect that's your aesthetic, that's your style.
Yeah.
Ideas, and some of them wouldn't fit in that kind of aesthetic.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. Especially as someone who obviously just works in one medium, that does like, obviously, I mean, in the beginning, I was obviously doing the more coloured paper maps, which people really liked. But just, as the following's grown and like I've got slightly like less time to do my own work, seeing as the commissions have picked up a bit more, then it's harder to find time to do the stuff that's not safe. And yeah, it can pigeonhole you a little bit.
Absolutely.
But I guess that's just social media. I think people in all creative spheres feel the same. Anybody who has any kind of a brand, even if it's not like a brand, it's
something that you sometimes feel somewhat tied to. I think it's quite admirable though if someone was to just sort of make a complete one. I'd find that I would applaud that. I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is that most people would do it. Like most people would be really excited for that to happen. It's just the changes in the kind of holding back is in your own head.
Yeah. Like a lot of the time, sometimes I feel as if I have to, like, if I've just recently finished something, I'll know I'll need to make a map next, because like I feel like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to make a map now, because that's kind of, if I don't, every once in a while, if I don't post one, it sort of derives from what people have come to expect. The map
Yeah.
reason primary reason why most of us do it, aren't they? Or most of us are on Instagram looking at other people's works and sharing ideas and what have you.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, social media, what a time to be alive.
yeah.
How do you manage your time kind of creating artwork? How do you make time in your life to draw or make art?
I don't. I'm crap with managing time. Can't do it. I'll binge making art and like spend like a good 6 or 7 hours, like on the hyper focus, like looking at it, and then I'll go away for days and not focus it. I work, and that's the job keeps me very much occupied comparatively, and not at the drawing desk where I'd like to be all the time. So I find that I'm doing it less and less now, but the time that I do spend drawing and on Photoshop and what have you is a lot more valued now, and I tend to not waste any time when I'm doing it either. Like it's like sit down, right, that's it, and it's a lot more systemic. And I've found that like in terms of like creative process, that can be really beneficial actually if you have a kind of relative understanding that your time is limited. You spend that time in a much more.
You make the most of it. Yeah, well, it's that law, I can't remember what it's called, but that the sort of task will expand or contract depending on the time that you have for the task. So if you've only got 3 hours to draw something, and it's just like, just got to get it done in 3 hours, like that's it, there's no more time.
I quite like you were saying earlier about maps being a therapeutic and a meditative process, though. I quite like to sit down and kind of not plan the time, but also have a kind of a rough idea as to how to spend it, if that makes sense. So I could just sort of sit there and think, right, if I don't get this finished in the 12 hours that I have, that's okay. And I'm not expecting anything of myself, and I've got to remind myself I'm just first and foremost I'm here to enjoy myself.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. It sounds like a more intuitive way of creating art, because I mean, obviously for people who do it full time, they have to create sort of like a routine, which although maybe leads to more production of work, it's that, that thing of social media that you end up kind of quantity over quality, although obviously not in every case, but certainly for me, if I feel like I'm on this sort of treadmill of producing maps all the time, it's not that. The whole point of it is supposed to be that it's fun.
Do you mind me asking, do you do this full time?
I do it part-time, so I work part-time in a 9-to-5 job, and then now I've been lucky enough that I've been able to move 2 days a week to doing maps. So now my time is split a bit more evenly, because obviously I have the weekends, which I try to only draw on 2 days, because I have found since I've switched to being part-time that sometimes the maps take over all of my free time. And obviously I love doing maps and I want to do maps a lot, but it becomes like an unhealthy relationship if I'm then drawing 8 hours 2 days a week and then 8 hours on a weekend. Because I've got a cat that needs to be fed, and I need to feed myself, and I've got to wash my my clothes. So yeah, it's been an interesting transition into kind of doing it for like just fitting it in around my job to actually having dedicated time to doing maps. And yeah, I don't know how people manage to go straight from full-time work to full-time art. Like, this way I'm learning how to make a routine that works for me.
I suppose it just comes with time and practice, so doesn't it? And diligence. And
yeah.
Well done for actually having that time and getting to a point where you're able to kind of facilitate your hobby with this career as well. Congratulations.
I'm really proud of myself. Like, as somebody who struggles with, as many humans do, like kind of perfection and feeling like you're not good enough at stuff. this is something that I've really stuck at and put a lot of myself into, and I felt like it's in the last few months it's really started to pay off, literally. So yeah, it's nice.
Nice one.
um
I don't take commissions.
don't take commissions.
No, I don't take commissions. I had a pop at it for a little bit, but I found it when I was being asked to do something, it was just sucking all the joy out of it, because I was, for one reason or another, you know, it was it wasn't what I was interested in, and
Yeah, it is pressure as well. Obviously, when you're creating your own worlds, it doesn't matter if you do a tree that you don't really like, or you put a mountain in the wrong place. But when it's somebody else's world, especially, you know, this map that I've just finished for the author is called Jean-Francois, and he's been working on his world for more than 20 years. So when he said to me that, and I was like, oh no, that's a long time. That's a lot of responsibility. But I'm so lucky that my clients have been very kind of flexible. Obviously, they've given me the idea, but they've been really happy for me to kind of do a bit of what I want to do with the map. So I appreciate them trusting me.
They give more creative freedom.
Yeah, but I can absolutely see if you had somebody who had a very sort of specific idea that they didn't want, there wasn't any leniency in that, or it was like your style but also not you, how that would make you reluctant to want to do commissions.
Oh yeah. I just like to do my own thing at the moment anyway.
Yeah. Would you ever consider kind of doing something like a Patreon?
See, I spoke to, I have intermittent chats with Jog. You should interview him, by the way. He's a lovely, lovely man. But he a long time ago, he sort of tried to persuade me, urged me, I don't know, to make a Patreon. Advised me, there we go. Advised me to make a Patreon, and it's just I understand, like, you know, everyone's got their own different understanding. I think what I do is ultimately it's a hobby. It's for fun. You know, I love my job. I love what I do. I don't intend to make this a career or anything like that. I just like it. So I don't think I would. No, I don't think that's my thing. But that's just me. You know what I mean?
No. I think it's a similar thing with the commissions, that once you start monetizing something, there is that sort of you're beholden to, you owe people something. Yeah,
and I don't really want to do that. I would be into making a collaboration with someone if the karma was right. You know, if the situation was all good. You know, I would be very much up for collaborating with somebody. But yeah, I don't think I would ever sort of rent myself out or anything like that. You know, for value. I'd like to be engaged with it for, you know, for the love of it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Each to their own. And do you have any kind of future projects that you would like to work on? Any dream projects that you'd like to do?
I've been doing this on and off for the past year or so. The last one I did kind of failed, but I basically I'm making like models of a map or a land space, and then photographing it and then using that as a reference drawing, so I can sort of turn them round. And I'm currently doing one at the moment. I was doing it a lot last night, like drawing from reference from this three-dimensional object thing. And I intend to make another one, but it involves me buying quite.
It sounds like a lot of work.
So it was, the last one I made was 20 by 20 inches, but it was, you know, there was a lot on it.
Yeah.
One twice the size next time as well. I want to like mold some body parts, like plaster my hand and put that in the map, in the landscape.
Yeah.
So all of that costs money and it takes a lot of time. It requires like a certain amount of skill that I don't have yet. So, but that ultimately is what I'm going for. I also I really enjoy writing, so I've been doing quite a bit of that, and it kind of ties into the, you know, the illustrative part of you know.
Yeah. When you say writing, do you mean in kind of like short stories, poetry,
Yeah, no.
all of the above?
There is a short story at the moment, and there was quite a long one. It got put on the back burner for a little bit, but yeah, and all of that in my head kind of amalgamates to some extent. So, yeah.
No, I think generally people who have the artistic flair to draw maps, at least, also have in their heads at least some of a book. I think it's just a trait that everybody has. Everybody that I've spoken to, they're like, yeah, I'm going to write a book. Like,
I'd really like to let the map tell the story, though, and it's harder. I hear a lot of people say that, but it's harder to do than one would normally expect. But I love it. I love it when I see other people's work, you know, on forums or scrolling, you know, Instagram, and the map sort of has this kind of narrative, for lack of a better term. And you can, I love it when that happens because it doesn't require any words. You can just sort of
yeah.
Some story unfolding whilst your eye is sort of navigating around this map, and I love it when that happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree.
Can't you?
Yeah. And do you have any other hobbies apart from cartography and art?
I have many.
I have many hobbies. A man of many hobbies.
Right?
A man of many hobbies.
Many. I'm really into the outdoors. I'm very outdoorsy. I like camping. I've recently just taken up wild swimming.
Wild swimming, that sounds cold.
Very, very cold. It snowed and we went up to a little lake recently. And that was a bit unpleasant at first, but you get a lot.
Do you do it in a wetsuit or just in your normal swimming trunks?
Jump in.
Bloody hell. I feel cold just thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, there's health benefits to it. There's a guy called Wim Hof. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he talks a lot about breathing he's a meditation instructor among many other things, and he talks a lot about cold therapy. And it ultimately, the way I kind of explain it, because my mum went, "What the bloody hell are you doing?" What are you doing, lad? And I imagine it's just putting like an ice pack all over your body. What I do for work is quite strenuous, and I usually find myself quite sore a lot. So it's like getting in there and resetting yourself, and your blood flows a lot nicer.
Yeah, well, I know it's like a kind of Nordic tradition doing like the ice baths. I've seen quite a few videos about that, and that it's supposed to be like amazing for your health. But I mean, I think I've lost a lot of my UK hardened like weather tolerance living here in Spain. I'm like, if it's below 20, I'm not interested.
Can we swap places then, please? Yeah. So ice baths are good. Yeah. I used to be into climbing when I could, climb like indoor climbing.
Yeah.
In the summer, would go out to the peaks and climb the boulders. The climbing centres in here aren't open at the moment because of lockdown.
Boo.
We've got many hobbies. What are your hobbies?
My hobbies, I mean, to be honest, most of my time is taken up with drawing maps for the moment. I also, when it's warm enough to go in the water, I enjoy scuba diving. I'm an advanced scuba diver, so going down to the murky depths of the ocean, which, I mean, a few people don't know this, but I have a master's in marine biology and conservation, which is kind of a juxtaposition to doing fantasy cartography. But ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a marine biologist. But I didn't actually get a chance to go diving until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I went in Thailand. Sorry?
Diving for the first time, like
diving for the first time. Yeah. And I mean, I was absolutely terrified. I've never been so scared of anything in my life. And I didn't realize that when you do your training, you have to learn how to take your mask off under the water. And obviously you're breathing because you've got your regulator in, but you have to, it's supposedly it's more scary to take out your regulator because that's what keeps you breathing under the water. But for me, actually, being able to breathe wasn't the problem. It was the water goes up your nose. And for me, my instant reaction is to go, which obviously, if you're under the sea, that's not really the best idea. So it took a lot of, well, I'm going to say bravery, really. I actually started my first open water course. I did it in Malta when I was doing a research trip there. And I started the course in the first week that I was there, and I didn't finish until 2.5 months later, because I went every day to the swimming pool with my friend, and he held me under the water while I practiced with my snorkel. And people thought that he was trying to drown me in the swimming pool, because obviously when you take off the mask, there's lots of bubbles and stuff. They were like, why is that boy trying to drown her in the swimming pool?
Trying to jump in to save you.
There was a few people that kind of like came over and was like, what are you doing? And I was like, it's okay. But the world is magical down there. Once you get over the blood-curdling fear of taking your mask off.
Yeah. No, it's I imagine it's quite inspiring as well for
yeah. Like, I mean, I'm really lucky here that I'm 15 minutes from the sea, so I can kind of go diving. I mean, obviously not at the moment, but it's really easy for me to go diving. And the wildlife here is not super kind of like colourful and whatever, like you see in in David Attenborough's documentaries. But there's a lot of octopus here. Do you love me a good octopus? And just even when you see a shoal of nondescript fish, they just look majestic, and you're just floating, and they don't really understand what you are, so they don't. I mean, you don't touch them, but they sort of swim around you, and it's just otherworldly.
Yeah, you often hear. I mean, I've never really dove. What's the past tense?
Dove? Gone diving?
Never.
Yeah.
But I've heard, because I've had a few friends do it, and you always hear the same. People find you get quite deep experiences from it. Excuse the pun. Yeah. Quite profound, experiences.
Yeah.
It's an alien world down there, isn't it? And you get.
Yeah, I feel that the experience is often kind of like when you're in really heavy snow, and there's that sort of quietness around you. Even when things are moving, and obviously when you're under the water, you can hear the bubbles that you're producing, but you can't. There's not loads of voices or the everyday chatter that's going on when you're up on the surface, and it's just sort of this, and nobody can talk to you. You can do this with your hands, but it's just very peaceful down there. Yeah. And everything, all the fish are just minding their own business, just doing their own thing. Yeah, it's great.
Good stuff.
And yeah, I think, there was a question from our previous attempt at map chats, and I don't know who asked it because I didn't write it down. But how do you have any suggestions for naming things on maps?
So it depends on what you're going for. Say, for example, if you're trying to make an analog of a Celtic, like map society, look at historical Celtic names and town names, and then sort of write them down, break them up, break up the name, draw inspiration from history when naming things, because you often see people naming things in quite a Eurocentric kind of way, and I would encourage people to sort of branch out and look at different aspects of how the names of towns really switch it up. Crossbreed cultures. Look at various tribal cultures and how they sort of weigh up against other aspects. And yeah, just look into history, I suppose, would be.
Yeah, there's plenty of names of places out there to take inspiration from.
And then basically what I do is because I'm really into Celtic mythology and also into certain African mythology. When I was younger, I was really into like Hellenistic antiquity and what have you. And I would just sort of take names from those three aspects and kind of breed them together, amalgamate them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of what I would suggest, I suppose, with naming things. Don't make them too obvious, and try and ensure that they're unique.
Yeah. No, I think that's good advice.
I don't think I always do that, to be fair. Like I'm not.
It's a hard task doing names. I mean, obviously, it's lucky obviously in commission maps that people have already come up with the names, and it's been it's interesting because, as I said, the author he's French, even though he lives in the US. So all of this is the one that I just posted yesterday, but he's writing the book in French, so all of the names are obviously written in French with French pronunciation, which is not something I'd encountered before. But it's been really interesting to do that.
Cool.
Okay. Well, we're getting towards the hour mark where we're going to get cut off. So I think we'll wrap it on up here. But thank you so much for coming on. It's been lovely to talk to you.
All right. Okay. Take care, and thank you for the chat.
Yes, well, it's been really nice to talk to you, and I will put a link to your account in the description. So if people are watching this back later, they can be like, going to go and give you a little lookaroo.
Good. Okay, well, have a nice evening.
Thank you very much. You too.
Bye for now.
Adios.